In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
What happens when financial chaos becomes your childhood normal? When repossessed cars and lost homes are a typical week, and your grandmother is the only thing standing between your family and complete collapse? For Leisa Peterson, this wasn't a cautionary tale, but the foundation of her life's work. Instead of letting scarcity define her, Leisa became obsessed with understanding it. What makes some people live in fear of never having enough, while others thrive with less? In this episode of the Money Tales podcast, Leisa shares her journey from financial survival to soulful abundance, and how she's now helping others rewrite their money stories one mindset shift at a time. Let me tell you a little more about Leisa. She's an author, financial educator, and money coach who helps entrepreneurs revolutionize their relationship with money. Author of The Money Catalyst and The Mindful Millionaire, Leisa was recognized by Forbes as one of the pioneering 10 women driving growth in wealth management and investing.
Here are 3 key money topics Leisa hits on in this conversation. First, why having money doesn't cure scarcity thinking. After 30 years of working with clients, Leisa discovered that some people live in scarcity no matter how much wealth they accumulate, while others naturally live abundantly even when they have smaller bank accounts. It's your relationship with money that determines your financial peace. Second, why it's important to avoid financial tunnel vision. Leisa warns that making every decision based solely on money prevents you from enjoying life's richness and daily fulfillment. And third, how she takes a guide without controlling approach to mentoring her daughter and son-in-law through their sudden business success. Leisa is careful to balance her role as both mother and financial expert while teaching them to build their own relationships with trusted professionals. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Leisa Peterson's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, I have the privilege of doing a lot of PR for Aspiriant, talking about investments and wealth planning. Today, I had an opportunity to pop onto a radio program that was talking about retirement. The producer, before I went on for my spot, had a conversation with me, and he was basically coming from the perspective of, Sandy, I have all these friends who are retiring. Some of them have multi-millions of dollars, and they're afraid to spend money because they're so freaked out about losing or running out of money during retirement. I had a chance to talk about that briefly on the radio program, and I thought it would be fun to talk about that here.
Absolutely. And no one likes having that kind of a fear.
One of the things that I think folks who are close to retirement or starting retirement should give thought to is that it is a really big transition. At that point, you will have worked, whether you're working for someone else or self-employed, for likely several decades. And when we stop working to retire, things shift. Our identity can be changed. The way that we access money can be changed. We're not drawing off of a paycheck anymore, however we're getting paid. Typically, we're actually saving money and adding to our portfolio, but in retirement, we start taking money out of the portfolio. That can cause some problems for folks. And then there's the whole idea of retirement for many people is several decades long. So it's a long planning horizon. You might be retired for as long as you've been working in some cases. There's a lot of things that happen over the years and a lot of potential risks. I think it's just really important to normalize that for people. I had 3 tips that I shared with the radio listeners that I thought I would share here. First is when you're getting ready to go into that retirement period, make sure you know your why, the why of your life. What is a purpose that drives you? What gives you fulfillment? What do you want to be spending your time with? How do you want your identity to be? The second is lean on your financial advisor. If you don't have one, make sure you hire one. Look for a certified financial planner who can help you plan for the long term. And when I say plan for the long term, I mean put together long range models that help you understand how much you can afford. What happens if investment returns are higher or lower than you expected? What happens if inflation is higher or lower than expected? Helping you think through all those contingencies and can really give you peace of mind. The third tip that I have is to systematize your financial life. That might be putting together a spending plan where you have a certain amount of money that automatically gets transferred from your portfolio into your checking account once a month, twice a month if you're trying to replicate the flow of a paycheck, maybe once a quarter if you don't feel like you need money coming in all that often. Make sure that you're setting aside time to look at your finances and understand what's going on a periodic basis. By periodic, I don't mean every day. There's a lot more fun things to do in retirement, but certainly on a quarterly basis and with your financial advisor, if you take my tip number 2 to heart.
All three hit me right in the heart, like where I breathe. All three feels like they give you peace of mind, confidence, breathing room, space.
That's what it's all about, because when you reach retirement,
you should be enjoying things.
Yes, you put a goal together that you have achieved. It's time to enter a different phase of life. It's an important time to enjoy and do the things that are most important to you.
Sandy, thanks for sharing this interview conversation you had. And it's my pleasure to turn our conversation to our guest today, Leisa Peterson. Thanks for joining us on Money Tales.
I'm so happy to be here.
Would you briefly introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that really impacted who you are today?
I loved what Sandy was just sharing 100%. And I feel like we'll dive into that even more in our conversation. But I have worked with people and their money for nearly 30 years now. And in the process of that, in many different roles, I became fascinated by something I kept observing. And that is, some people just can't help but live in scarcity, no matter how much money they have, while others naturally live more abundantly, even if and when they have less. So I became obsessed many years ago with understanding how someone stuck in scarcity thinking could switch sides. That's what led me to focus on the work that I do now and the books that I work on. So that would be the biggest pivotal moment, I'd say, in my life around money. A few other things that come to mind that are just really recent and also building off what Sandy said. Second, my daughter, who is in her late 20s, and her husband have built a business recently. And watching them go through this process, different than my husband and I starting businesses 30 years ago, is that this next generation faces a lot of different financial challenges than traditional advice may lend itself to support them around. They need strategies around things like irregular income, sudden wealth from the viral success that they've had in their business, and building wealth beyond just creating content. And then the third thing is that I'm in a different phase of my life where recently, because we're semi-retired, it brought new responsibilities, like how to manage money properly when you might not be really focused so much on the income piece of it, and how to ensure it can support you if you don't work as much, how to create opportunities to thrive mentally while still doing things that you love. It's just been very interesting to see how when you're creating money and you're in that stage of life, you think differently, but we make this transition, and we hope to make this transition that my husband and I have been making. And it's changed so much. It's not what maybe we've been told. And so that's been a big pivotal thing that I'm still in the midst of, but I think it's fascinating to make this transition.
You are super introspective. This is going to be fun. Leisa, let's go back in time though. And when you were growing up, how did you begin to learn about money?
Money has played a very interesting role. Grew up in the East Bay area, California, with very little. My parents had just finished high school. Actually, my dad, I think, went to jail right after high school. It just was a very different environment than I live in today. It's hard to even imagine, but my parents never got trained about money. They were coming of age and starting their family when debt started to take off in the late 60s, early 70s, and they could never stay on top of it. So we would have cars repossessed, we would lose our house, we would not go without food because my grandmother would show up at magical moments that I look back now and understand what was going on. But that created a lot of stress. At around 8, I decided that if I had a lot of money, if only we had more money, everything would be fine in life. But without money, it wasn't going to be a safe life for me. And that pretty much set me on the trajectory of building wealth as early as I could, even starting a business when I was like 8 years old, getting my first credit card because I lied at JCPenney's when I was 11, checking account at about the same time. I was like, I'm going to figure money out. So that's my earliest memories.
You pioneered all this stuff yourself. You felt you had to take control, and money is safety to you as a young person. And gosh, your dad going to jail, having cars and homes be taken from you. How did that impact you as you were maturing and starting to make a little bit of money?
I split into two people. One was this creative, adventurous, I want to see the world. I want to do all these new things. I want to travel. There was a part of me that was always there. And yet I went to college. My parents hadn't gone to college. I studied clothing design because I wanted to be in this creative field. And once I started working, I was making minimum wage and I couldn't support myself in San Francisco. My first job was with Jessica McClintock. And
Oh my gosh, I loved her dresses.
I was so passionate, but I had to cocktail on the weekends to be able to pay our bills. And my boyfriend at the time, husband, eventually there was this decision along the way that first year out of school. Wait a minute, I have to sacrifice all of what I want for money and I better get this figured out. So what did I do? I applied to get my MBA in finance, which was totally a different path than I thought I was going to do. And yet that's what I did. So that's how it affected me. I kind of threw aside my dreams and my passions and said, let me go figure this thing called money out.
Good for you, Lisa. And I'm curious because you touched earlier on the difference between scarcity and abundance thinking. And given your childhood and what you've shared with us so far, as you were moving into college and out of college, taking that job, realizing that it wasn't going to pay the bills and that you'd need another job on top of it. Looking back, how would you describe your mindset at that time?
Money was the most important thing, and I had to figure out how to get it. That was what was going on inside of my mind. The things that I thought were going to be important in life, I needed to kind of just push aside and focus on my career and making money. Ultimately, I was not at that time thinking about money as a tool, which is abundant thinking. I was thinking, I need to chase after money and adapt my life and do whatever I need to get the money. That isn't a healthy way to look at life. That is scarcity.
I appreciate you going deeper and explaining how you think about it. Because when you were describing it, I was thinking that you realized you needed more money, you're going to get it, and that would help your situation out more. But it's not as if you felt like there was no way you would ever be able to make enough money, that there was a lack, but just that you had to keep chasing it.
We've all been in financial planning, and what you were talking about, Sandy, before about the importance of systematizing your plan or leaning on an advisor. I didn't come from a world where there were any advisors. I took it upon myself to say, well, you've got to figure this out and you're kind of all alone. And if you don't figure this out, there's not going to be any support to help you do this. That was where I was coming from. Because when you come from the lower middle class in America, you don't have tutors, you don't have guides, you don't have resources. It's hard to understand that. Mentors, you don't get that stuff. That's not what you have money for. It's the world I live in today, but that wasn't what I was exposed to before. This grasping your way or clawing your way to get somewhere was where I came from. And what I didn't understand would ultimately need to be changed if I was going to create harmony and freedom, regardless of how much money I had.
And how did you get to the point where you had that realization? There's another way to be thinking about it.
Two big things. One was, sadly, we talked a little bit about my dad. My dad was murdered in 1999 by his ex-girlfriend and her boyfriend. And at that time, I had a really big job at Wells Fargo. I was negotiating contracts and co-branded relationships for credit cards between Wells Fargo and other companies. And I was in the midst of one of the biggest deals. I had worked for this moment to do this deal. And then I get the news about him. I sort of split into two. One was, I'm going to keep this outward facing person that everybody knows going. And then I'm going to also start looking at this introspective journey. What is life all about? Why am I even here? If this could happen to my father, then it could happen to my baby daughter. It could happen to my husband. I had to look at what was I valuing, because I could tell that my importance and value of money had superseded everything. And now he had died. And I realized that I could end up in that same spot. I wasn't on a healthy trajectory by making money so important to me. That was a pivotal moment that began a journey of, I'm going to keep the outward looking the same, but I'm going to start looking at what's the meaning of life and why am I here? And began meditating. And that's why my book is called The Mindful Millionaire. I began this 25-year journey of saying, there's got to be more to life than money. And I didn't know that's what was beginning at that time, but that was what happened.
What a horrible experience with your dad and caused you to have this life-changing experience. What's interesting, just by the title of your book, wealth is still central to your world, but you wanted to connect it more to your values. Describe how you think about money today and what is your relationship to money as a result of all you've gone through.
In my late 50s, my husband and I have been building houses and flipping houses and engaged in investing in lots of things over this past 30 years, in addition to raising two beautiful children. Whatever I say next, I just want to say it's coming from a place of, I am set financially for the rest of my life. And I think that gives me great privilege in which to speak. I may not say the same things that I'm about to say had that not been the case. From that perspective, what I now see is that money, obviously, is very important in the world that we live in. We need it to fuel the lives that we have. But when money is front and center, the whole entire reason that you make your decisions, that is number one. How much money? How much are we going to make? How much do I keep? A lot of us, when we focus on money, we do operate this way. It's funny because I meet a lot of people that operate this way. It doesn't mean you throw all of that out. But what you do realize is that the quality of life and the experience of what you're living on a moment by moment basis is always going to be more important and more satisfying. Even though I have a tendency to run the numbers, I'm very good at paying attention to what is this ideal life that I want to be living? How do I create that? Even if I have less money. So this past 10 years, especially from leaving my role as a financial advisor and starting this company where I teach people about this relationship, I've made far less money in that time from a traditional job, lots more money in passive income sources than I would have ever thought possible because the creativity being applied has just been astronomically beneficial. But I'm living a life based on moment by moment, what's most important for my family, for my health, for my husband's health, for my freedom, for my ability to travel, like do the things that are important. So remember how I said, I gave all of that up really early in life. So this second chapter is about leaning into, how do I do this so that no moment is wasted, that I'm appreciative and celebrating, bringing everyone else who wants to be a part of it along with me on that journey.
What tips do you have for our listeners that they could apply?
Please, please, please spend more time leaning on your advisor and figuring out what your financial plan looks like. Because what I've seen is most people that get to a certain level in life, those who would be of hiring a financial advisor who have the means, they do not trust the numbers in the plan enough to say, maybe this is enough. Maybe I have enough and I could actually enjoy my life a lot more than I believe is possible. Work with your advisor to understand that perhaps your scarcity mindset is keeping you working longer than you need to, maybe working longer hours than you need to. Maybe you still want to keep your job, but maybe you could back away. Maybe you're not planning those vacations that you could be taking and comfortably afford it. Going in a little more detail, because this is where it changed my life, is financial planning tools that allow you to say, what if I die with zero? What if I figure out what my plan might do to take me to 95 or even 100? How much could I spend from now until that day living a really comfortable life? What might that look like? And how might I help my children buy houses now rather than give it to them? I want to make them successful now, not when I'm dead. I want to spend that money. Let's question these crazy assumptions and use the advisor as the tool to understand that you might have a lot more options than you're giving yourself the ability to see.
Your business is to help people who are reluctant to spend, to get freedom to spend. I think in some ways we do the same with some of our clients, not all, but I think you're very focused on that. But it costs money to hire you. I'm curious, how do you see your clients make that transition, that ability to invest in themselves and their future to get the freedom that you're talking about?
I'm not actively looking for clients. I feel like clients find me when there's a connection with some of the things that we're talking about and when they read my books. My focus is really more of to encourage people to engage in these sorts of conversations, which is free. They're listening to it. This is my work. I have been in training for what I'm talking about for 10 years. And it began by me walking away from a traditional job and starting self-employment, which was really, really scary because I still had the scarcity mindset. And so I was like, I just walked away from a really good gig and I have no idea what I'm going to do here. And that caused me to develop new neural pathways in my brain to like figure out how to build a business in my early 50s, having an internet business, having known Facebook and nothing else. It was crazy pants. Every year as we've gone by, I've learned how to make my money go further. People listening to this call would probably crack up that I travel the world, that we do all these amazing adventures. If they watch my Facebook or on my email list, I share these things. Be like, how you must have hundreds of thousands of dollars available to you. And I'd be like, you would be shocked at how little we spend because we've just learned how to focus on the things that matter. We don't have any debt. We're really good at making money work. We belong to something called home exchange. We have extra houses. People get points. They use our house. We go to their house. There's no money changing hands. We find all these magical ways to make traveling part of our lifestyle, which doesn't cost very much, but it took time to be scared, to be uncomfortable, to not know what to do, and then try things and be like, wow, that was really cool. Let's do that again.
To me, I hear they come to you when they're ready, and we have very similar experiences. Different reasoning. It depends on each client, but they come to us when they're ready.
Leisa, earlier you said that as you and your husband have been transitioning to semi-retirement, that things aren't working out the way you were told they would. That caught my attention, and I'm wondering if you could dive a little deeper on that.
Let's take traditional retirement, this idea that you saved up a certain amount of money, and then that money is plus Social Security or insurance or something else. Those are your resources. And I think what has happened for us is because we have multiple streams of revenue that may come and go, and that we might do like a syndicated real estate investment. So it's good for 3 to 7 years. I'm always staying on top of like, where would money go when we have money coming in that needs to be reinvested? This idea that there's a pool of money and then that supports your income. That hasn't been the case for us. We're very diversified. We've got lots of things and we're active and passive investors. I like multiple streams of income from many different sources. There isn't like a moment in time where we're retired. We're still active in these different areas. I have a business, my husband has a business. We may work and we may not work. And I like the flexibility that it gives us, but it's nothing like what I thought this was going to look like.
Leisa, tell us about your newest book, The Money Catalyst.
This is a fictional parable. My first book is a nonfiction, and it's all about helping people dive into their relationship with money. In this case, The Money Catalyst chronicles a woman, a 35-year-old woman in the Bay Area, who realizes that she's stuck in these scarcity patterns from her childhood. She takes us on a journey that allows the reader to experience what it's like for someone else. But what's funny is it's based on all these 30 years of working with people and money, because what I wanted to do was give people journaling questions at the end of each section that would allow you to see a story unfolding that causes you to think about your own relationship with money, what's working, what's not working. There's also a pivotal part of the book, which is inspired by my husband and my own journey with money and our relationship of Mirabelle and her husband. And he feels one way about money and she feels another way. This new information has changed how she thinks. So we get to see what kind of conversations are they having when they're not on the same page about money? How do they help each other when there's tension? We're not sure if they are actually going to help each other, but also their family and their friends as they talk about this idea of scarcity in a very practical way. They're not just like, oh, here's scarcity. Nobody really talks about that. I mean, I talk about that, but normal people don't. We're seeing how it plays out in a normal person's life. And then what can be done if you know that you have these patterns and you want to change them. You're getting lots of ideas and insights into all these things that I've learned, but you're seeing it through the characters. And I'm so proud because it turned into a real page turner where now I have to tell people to go back and do the journaling questions because they can't stop reading until they finish it, which is fine. But now you need to go back because you're going to get a lot more out of it when you read it with the journaling. So I'm very proud of how it turned out.
Congratulations. It sounds like a really great technique and a great way to build upon your lived experience and the work you've done with clients to help others.
And I wanted to help younger people not have to necessarily go through all the things that I have. Funny story, my son was visiting with his friends and they're all in college, and my books were sitting out, not on purpose, but on this desk. And some of them were sleeping up here, and they brought the books down and they're like, we started reading the books. I was like, well, you could have those books if you want. And they ended up taking them with them. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's working. They were interested in both books.
Fantastic.
Lisa, you mentioned about your daughter earlier and her husband and how they're having their own money journey. And I'm curious, as someone who has your background and is a mother to your daughter, what kind of money conversations are you having with them? And how do you balance between motherly advice and professional advice?
When we realized that this business was not just a hobby, but it was actually taking off to the point where they were going to be able to use the business to build wealth, everything changed. I definitely put on my CFP hat because I knew that if they could set things up right from the beginning, understanding all the things that we learn as certified financial planners, let's go through the whole list of important things. Taxes. They live in California. They're going to be paying a lot of taxes. What can we do? There's been introducing them to my accountant, and my accountant wasn't accepting new clients. And I said to him, I will make them easy clients. I will prep them before we come to you with questions. So it's really a collaborative relationship. Zoe, my daughter, I want you to have these conversations. I'll provide the introduction, but I want you to learn how to do this on your own. Let's take that from every single professional, whether that be attorney, the insurance people, the financial advisor, which they're not quite there yet, but they will be. And we talked about this. How can we set you up for success with the trust? They just bought a house and now they're famous. And we had to make sure that it wasn't easy to trace where they live. So many steps that we're going through on a regular basis to make sure that the foundation is rock solid. And every time we reach a milestone, then we're preparing for the next one.
I think it's amazing that they are welcoming you into those conversations and letting you guide them. Congratulations on doing a good job there. Leisa, what's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
My next conversation about money is going to be perhaps a client. The next client would be someone who is inheriting a lot of money. And the biggest challenge and the reason they're coming to me is because they realize that they have not been a good steward of money in the past. They have a lot of emotional concerns because of poor decisions that they've made. And while even though they can hire a financial advisor, they know that there would be a lot of value to meeting with someone like me who would help them navigate what are those social and emotional and dreamy aspects of what's happening in their life that they want to seize on.
Sounds like a great conversation. And you are having conversations all the time about money, which is wonderful. Leisa, share with our listeners, where's the best place for them to find you?
You could go to wealthclinic.com/vision and get a first chapter of the Money Catalyst and the Mindful Millionaire if you are interested in what we're talking about. I also have meditations that you can access there. I'd also say the moneycatalyst.book.com is another resource where you could read more about that new book.
It has been incredible talking with you on Money Tales, hearing your story and having you share so many of the vulnerable moments and all you've gone through.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.